Morning everyone, rise and shine. It's a little late for me. It's 6:15 right now. We should have been getting started about 15 minutes ago, but I'm giving myself a little bit of forgiveness. Better late than never. So here we go. Let's get started.
All right, so with today's workout, I'm starting off with a little bit of jump rope. We're going in with the double leg, doing about 200. Then we do some side to sides, about 100 of those. And then we do some single legs. I like to do them alternating, about 10 by 10. And then I move into some squats, squat matrix. I kind of do them into a couple of different patterns, but for now it's a kind of a neutral stance, and then I alternate between that and toed out. So I'm a really big fan of doing squat matrices. I like to do multiple different types of squats because I believe the more you have prepared for different situations and put your body in different resistance patterns, the better prepared you will be in the future. Because I think that if you only train in one way, your body adapts and gets used to one way. But if you train in multiple different positions and patterns, your body will have had experience and will be used to it. So in the future, you won't have as many issues if you come across a new movement or a different position in the real world. I don't just randomly choose squats. I have a purpose and a reason for why I decide to do the certain squats that I do. It just depends on what is the function, right? What is it that I'm trying to get out of these squats? So for now, I'm just kind of generally trying to cover the different positions with my foot in each position. So here we are doing some leg swings. I'm doing about 10 each, going front to back, doing a little bit of the side to side. And depending on the day, if I feel more sore and stiff, I'll definitely continue to do more reps. But today, I kind of switched it up and decided to do more dynamic alternating hamstring stretches. And then I add in my hand reaches for a little bit of extra flexibility and stretching. And then I start to add in a little bit more of a hand reach because I'm starting to warm up and I feel like my hamstrings are loosening up a little bit more, and so I can kind of take that range of motion as I'm reaching my hands down towards my feet and up and away. So this next set of dynamic alternating hamstring stretches, I am just doing it a little bit faster and just working on my rhythm and timing. Now that my muscles and my movements are a little bit more loosened up, I do a little bit of a rotation reach so that I can load up that hip and that hamstring just a little bit more. Sometimes I like to pause, kind of hold it for a little bit of an extra beat, make sure I'm getting that stretch. And then when hit this one, we're working on my dynamic alternating adductor stretch. This one's working on the inside of my inner thighs of the straight leg. Trying to open up my toes towards the ceiling as I go down, but my left inner adductors are really tight, so this is kind of difficult. As I stretch to the right, I definitely have a little bit more range of motion into hip and foot external rotation, which means I'm able to bring my right toes up towards the ceiling a little bit better as I stretch my inner adductors. But I'm able to do so with a lot of additional lumbar spine flexion. So I get a lot of that additional motion and range of motion from my low back. But as you can kind of see, my left hip doesn't really bend down deep as I go into this stretch. I have to really dig deep into my low back to be able to get some of that mobility. Now that my hamstrings are all warmed up, I decide to move into some modified good mornings. Now normally you would just hinge straight from the hips, but I decide to add in a little bit of extra knee bend because I don't have as good back strength. The next thing that we're going to work on are overhead squats with the barbell. One of the things that I think I have an issue with this particular movement is I don't think I bring my hips down and back nearly as well as I do. I kind of squat vertically, and so I think if I were to be able to pull my hips down and back, that will help me to get my knees so far over my toes and will help bring my tibias kind of back over my feet and help with giving me better stability. So here, decided to just kind of do a superset of just some clean pulls, just to kind of warm up my traps, get everything ready. And then once I've warmed up, I go into some split press. Just working on going from standing position to the split. I work on kind of that explosive power. I want to try and keep my elbows up as high as I can during the setup. And I want to think about driving my shoulders and arms up and away and keeping my shoulder blades locked down and back. Here I kind of move into more of a superset of getting my cleans back in by just pulling the bar up to the shoulders, getting warmed up. And then from here again, I just work on the split press for the other leg. Once again, as I push up, I want to think about having my arms straight, driving my arms out and away, but also kind of keeping my shoulders, my shoulder blades specifically, down and back and engaged to allow for that shoulder stability. So I'm going to do about 3 sets of the clean pulls and split press superset. All of my warm-ups were kind of geared towards getting my hamstrings ready, getting my shoulders ready, and getting myself primed to do these explosive movements. It was really important that I just kind of work on the muscle coordination, because this is still kind of a new concept for me, so I'm still just working on the technique and getting more explosive. So here we are in week 3, day 2 of the quarantine. So I decided to do a little bit of the same jump rope routine as I did last time. I did my double leg, single leg, and side to sides, about 100 each. And now I've worked into my Theraband matrix. I started off with Theraband side steps. Now I'm going into more of like a static hold and doing these hip external rotations 1 by 1 each side. Ideally, you start off with 10 and kind of build your way up to maybe 20 or 30. But for now, I definitely think just kind of, for me, I kind of just do a couple of different exercises, one after another. You can kind of do them however you like, but for me personally, I just kind of like to do a little bit of everything and kind of repeat the whole set all over again. In between sets or movements, you can always take a break, shake it out. Next, I go into a combination move. So we're doing a Theraband squat with hip external rotation. Feet are going to be about shoulder width apart, and we're going to go down into a squat position, and we're going to open up at the knees, try and drive those knees out and externally rotate those hips. You're going to try and keep your feet on the floor as best as you can, but if they happen to roll out like mine do, that's okay. You're also going to want to try and keep your feet just slightly externally rotated. We're working on the Theraband runner stance and moving our other leg into hip extension. You want to focus on just keeping everything locked in and engaged. You want to keep your core muscles, your arm muscles nice and stiff and firm as you are reaching back with that one leg, because as you do these exercises, now we're reaching out to the side, it requires a lot of stability, and you don't want to just think about only moving one part. You want to keep everything engaged. You want to keep your core engaged. You want to keep the muscles along your hips engaged, the muscles along your arms. And that stands for this one as well. So this is the Theraband runner stance exercise. We move the band down towards our feet. So with this one, you want to really make sure that your core is engaged. You want to make sure that you're really fired up through your hip flexors, your ankle dorsiflexors. You want to make sure your arms are nice and firm and you aren't slouched over. I really enjoy doing these Theraband exercises, and I try and do them at least every day or at least 4 to 5 days a week, because these are like the accessory muscles. These aren't like the big time muscles. The reason why we're doing this is for hip stability. So it really hits these deeper structures that don't normally get a whole lot of activation throughout the day, especially if you're sitting and doing work. So I really think it's important to strengthen these hip and glute muscles because they really make a difference in terms of how you feel and how stable you feel whenever you're balancing on one limb. So this is something that I do because I know it helps me with playing in sports, whether I need to be more explosive and push off and or gain my balance when I've lost my footing. So this is why I spend so much time working these specific exercises, because I know how important it is to kind of strengthen these deeper hip structures, especially as a runner. Your muscles tend to be more quad dominant, so you don't get a chance to train these glute muscles nearly as much. So we're still here in week 3, day 2, just trying to get in a little bit of extra work. Working on my bent over rows and supersetting it with a front squat. Just working on my technique. Want to try and keep my spine in neutral. Chin tucked, shoulders engaged, and pulling my elbows up and back. I'm just really trying to make sure that I keep everything engaged as I do the reps. I chose the bent over rows and the front squat because when I want to get better at my clean and split jerk press, I know that I don't have as strong of a mid back and shoulder muscles, so I want to kind of develop that strength. So I decided to kind of practice those two complex movements separately so that hopefully they will translate to helping me to do a better clean and split jerk press. And I also wish that these exercises will help translate to making me more athletic. Okay, here we go, week 3, day 3. We have footwork and coordination. This set of exercises was taken from Lee Taft. I've been following him. Shout out to Lee Taft. He is one of the most athletic 50-year-olds I've seen. He teaches speed and athletic development for tennis players and basketball players. He has, really kind of developed a way of, finding explosiveness and developing change of directions and being able to assume, the right positioning and developing the right kind of footwork. I definitely, want to be able to get better at these things. I really appreciate the invention of the internet because you get a chance to see all of these new cool exercises and ways to train, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to do here, is just kind of share all of the different type of exercises that I do, because that's my way of giving back, because I've seen a bunch of different exercises and I always thought they were all really creative, and that's what I want to be able to kind of share. So these last set of exercises I've been doing, they're jumping jacks, kind of foot matrices. I've been doing the regular jumping jack movement with my arm, and I've been really kind of just changing around all of the different foot movements. We kind of do some front to backs, some side to sides. Can even work on some little hip twists. But these are all kind of good movements that'll help just work on general coordination. I learned this whole matrix from the Gray Institute. I took the Gary Gray program for functional transformation, and I, learned so much about what it meant for functional training. So that really helped me develop my kind of like background for my exercise choice going forward. So this next set is just me working through transitions and foot positioning and footwork, and just kind of getting crisp movements here. Just doing 90-degree switches and Then I kind of progressed to doing these 90-degree switches to crossovers and touching the cones and coming back towards the starting position. So I kind of just get more reactive with my switches, and then I want to try and incorporate the crossover. So next I work on some wide stance box drops. You start off on a box or a ledge and go into a drop position. You want to kind of stick the landing and focus on pushing out from the bottom of your feet and kind of gaining that stability in through your hips. This is great for when you want to be able to kind of change directions or plant your feet and get set. It's just good for help training the athlete to become more ready. This next one is a split stance box drop, and this is going to help get you to test your stability upon landing on one foot or in a split stance position. This is helping stimulate kind of running or jumping or stopping on one foot, and it'll help train hip stability and body's balance. This is also a good way for you to kind of see which side is more vulnerable or which one has less stability or less balance or less control. You know, it really allows you to kind of choose one side at a time, and you can really see, you know, one leg might get more tired versus the other. So this is a good way to kind of challenge one leg at a time, and you get to kind of pick apart your body's vulnerabilities basically and figure out what needs to get work. That's why I like doing a lot of these different exercises that were, you know, because each exercise and each movement, they're all their own little test. So, you know, in order to get good at, you know, a wide variety of things, you really have to put your body through, you know, a lot of different tests or different challenging positions to make sure that, you know, it's ready to face anything and everything. Because, you know, for me personally, coming from injuries in my past, especially a knee injury where I had to get a meniscus surgery on my left side, I definitely can tell that my left leg is more vulnerable to, you know, left knee pains and left hip weakness. I've had a lot more left ankle sprains, so I've definitely looked for the answers when it comes to finding the solutions to develop, you know, that strength again, and I realized that it came through the hips. That's why I spend so much time doing these hip Theraband exercises, because I know that they strengthen those deeper hip structures and they really help me to develop like a lot more stability and control and balance on one leg. And I know that if I just kind of do them every day, it's kind of like, you know, brushing my teeth. It's just something that I do, and I know it makes me feel so much stronger, and I know it makes a big difference when I play sports, because now I can definitely tell that I haven't really had too many injuries since I've been doing these exercises and working on my recovery. So, you know, it's kind of the reason why I became a physical therapist, because I just wanted to get better. And, you know, now I've found all the exercises that I think are helpful, and I want to share them with everyone else. So here we are. This is me just kind of finishing up the Theraband hip matrix. And lastly, we have the side steps. So I like to do the side steps, and then I basically take the Theraband movements and all the different movements. So I'll do some hip flexion, I'll do some hip extension, I'll do some hip abduction, and then I'll do my little hip external rotations. I like to do these Theraband exercises because I feel like they help me for my hip stability, my hip strengthening. It really hits those deeper structures and really kind of wakes everything up. Sometimes I'll kind of do them in the middle of a workout if I feel like my hips aren't quite warmed up, or they need a little bit of extra, you know, attention. I'll kind of do them to kind of get them all fired up, and then I'll come back. So that's kind of what I did here. I wanted to see, you know, maybe if I do some glute strengthening, that'll help with this split stance wide box drop. So I feel like it did.
Good morning, guys. It's Justin. We're out here. It's about 5:30 in the morning. Today we're gonna go through a little bit of a shoulder workout and leg workout. All right, so for today we're gonna be doing a little bit of leg work again, as well as strengthening our shoulders and our back. So today I want to focus on doing some sumo squats, shoulder matrix, hit all planes, work on some lunges, work on my bent over row, and also work on some front squats. All right, let's get to it.
I decided to start off with the Sumo Deadlifts because it's a great variation on the deadlift. It's going to decrease my lumbar strain and strengthen my quads and glutes, but it's also going to strengthen my adductors and my external rotators. So what I'm looking to do here is I want to get my shoulders, knees, and toes all lined up. I want to try and keep a neutral spine, and then I also want to make sure that I'm having my shoulder over the bar. And before even I get started, I like to make sure that I have a good setup in terms of my breath work. So usually I'll stand up, I'll breathe in, breathe out on the way back up. Now here you can see I have a decent alignment on the finish. My head, shoulders, hips, and toes are all lined up. But on this next one, I don't quite finish all the way. My head kind of dips at the end, and my hips don't get quite a good hip extension. So I think it's really important when you're doing lifting to always finish, right? Make sure you have good quality repetitions. Make sure that you complete the movement and don't kind of do it part way. So it's always good to just make sure you have, a good finish with each repetition, because these are really difficult movements, right? You don't want to just blow through them. So I want to try and make sure that I have a good hip extension, have my shoulders engaged, my chin tucked, and don't allow my, something to dip like my neck or something like that. Now here, ideally, I would like to keep my shins perpendicular to the bar, but right now this is this is the best kind of like adductor range of motion that I have. As you can kind of see, my left knee is a little wobbly at times, and so I definitely have some tight adductors, which kind of makes this a good exercise for me, because I want to be able to strengthen my wide stance, and I definitely think that's one of my weaknesses right now. And so I definitely think this is why I kind of chosen this particular exercise, because I need to not only strengthen that, but in addition, I need to do more mobility work, as you could see. Next up, I'm doing a shoulder press matrix. This is inspired from the Gary Gray Institute. Basically, I'm just trying to hit all 3 planes of motion: sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane, but I'm just trying to also do kind of like the front and back components of each movement. They're kind of like an equal and opposite reaction. So I'm just doing the front version, one where I kind of go back a little bit more, do one where I'm kind of going to the sides, opposite sides, and then the same side, and then rotations kind of going front and then backwards rotations. So I definitely would suggest starting off with lighter weights to begin this, and kind of progressing up with each movement, because these are very kind of different and not your traditional movements. So it takes some time to getting used to, especially these ones kind of when you're reaching over and across. I think definitely people with shoulder pain or shoulder impingement are going to have issues with this movement, so I wouldn't recommend doing that immediately. But definitely I suggest starting off just doing this matrix without any weight at first, and then slowly adding in weight and trying each of the different movements. I decided to do all of them at once, and I only do about 3 each. That way I can kind of work on my endurance, but I don't really max out one set of muscles too much. So I can do 3 and then switch to another one and still feel okay in terms of getting my endurance up, even though I'm doing about 12 on each side. So definitely one of the reasons why I enjoy doing these matrices for any movement is that it really gives you a chance to pick apart, where your vulnerabilities are, where your weakness is, what things cause you pain. So I definitely think that it's good, because each movement is basically its separate test, right? So you're taking the movement of shoulder press and you're challenging it in each different kind of movement in each plane, and you're generally assessing like, where are my weaknesses? Where do I have joint issues or tightnesses? Where do I have ligament instability? So you're just really trying to make sure, you have all of your bases covered in terms of your strength, right? So just in case you happen to do something that requires this type of movement or this much pressure or load, your body is ready and prepared. It's seen something like this before. It's been under this type of stress and pressure, and it allows you to have that confidence that, I can put myself through these, strange movements and have my body be able to resist this type of pressure or tension or positioning. So it's been there before. It's been challenged like this in all 3 planes. So up next, I'll be doing front lunges with a modified grip. I'll be doing 5 sets of 10. I start off with the normal front lunge, but I eventually end up switching my grip to about a cross arm 90 degrees at shoulder flexion, just because I can't hold that position as long as I really would like through my fingers and my wrists. So I eventually have to adjust, and that's totally okay with me because I'd rather keep my body happy than kind of work through ridiculous amounts of strain and pain. I like doing this exercise because it's going to help me to accomplish my goal of getting better at improving my back strength and improving my shoulder strength, and giving me the ability to get better at being able to do the split press. So I'm hoping that by breaking this down and doing this movement, it's going to help me in the long run to also develop my skills at doing my clean and split press. Next, I'll be doing bent over rows, 5 sets of 10. As I'm doing this, I think about the same kind of setup as I would do for deadlift. I want to hinge at my hips. I want to think about keeping my spine in neutral. I'll keep my chin tucked. My shoulders are going to be engaged, and I'm thinking about my core engaged and pulling back and squeezing between my shoulder blades and squeezing between my elbows, trying to think about bringing my elbows up and back. Here's an example of what it might look like if someone wasn't paying attention to the positioning of their spine. They might have excessive, neck extension. Their low back might be flexed a little bit more, and when they pull through their shoulders, they're not engaged through the mid-back, so they're just kind of dragging through their arms. That's why when I do these exercises, I find it important to just focus on my spine alignment. So I'm really making sure I'm hinging at my hips, trying to keep my spine as neutral as possible. I'm thinking about keeping my chin tucked and keeping my shoulders engaged, and as I pull back and up, I'm squeezing between my elbows. So last up, I'm doing my front squats, 5 sets of 10. Once again, I'm just kind of doing 5 sets of everything here, just going for high volume, using some weights that I feel comfortable doing and know that I'll be able to do that many, where I feel somewhat tired by the end of the 10. So for me, the reason why I decided to do the front squats and the front lunges, once again, all of these exercises are just kind of help me build up my back strength and my shoulder strength to kind of hold this position right before doing the clean split press. So everything that I've been working on here has just been in preparation for getting better at that clean split and press. And I'm hoping that as I continue to do this, I will, just get better and better, and, continue to develop my athletic abilities. So after looking at the tape, I had a chance to see what things I'm good at and what things I'm not good at. So moving forward, I have a plan for stretching my adductors and my hamstrings. I want to continue to strengthen my shoulders so that I can do that shoulder press a little bit more efficiently. I also want to work on improving my change of direction as well as my single leg strength. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. This was the first episode of Under the Microscope. I'm your host, Justin Chuck. I'm a doctorate of physical therapy. You can check me out at AIM Physical Therapy. Our website is www.justampt.com. I'll be continuing to update you guys with my athletic development and my training schedule. And I hope you all continue to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.